ABC7 Eyewitness News presents Vote 2022, the race for Illinois governor, the Republicans debate. Produced in conjunction with the League of Women Voters of Illinois and Univision Chicago. Here is our moderator, ABC7's Alan Krzyzewski.
Good evening, and welcome to the Republican debate in the race for Illinois governor. This debate is produced by ABC7 in collaboration with the League of Women Voters of Illinois and Univision Chicago. This debate's also being distributed to TV and radio stations across our state in a cooperative effort with the Illinois Broadcasters Association. So here is the criteria that is set by the League of Women Voters for eligibility to participate in tonight's debate. The candidates must be both constitutionally and ballot eligible. They must also be registered with the State Board of Elections and have evidence of a formal active campaign. Well, now let's introduce the participants in tonight's debate. Darren Bailey. He is a Louisville native and represents Illinois' 55th district in the state Senate. Richard Irvin. He is currently in his second term as mayor of the city of Aurora. Gary Rabine. He lives in Bull Valley and is the CEO of the Rabine Group. Paul Schimpf lives in Waterloo and served one term as a state senator representing Illinois' 58th district. Max Solomon. He lives in Hazel Crest and works as an attorney. And Jesse Sullivan is from Petersburg and is the founder and the CEO of the venture capital group Alter Global. Now, Mr. Sullivan is joining us remotely this evening after testing positive for COVID-19, but we're glad you're feeling well and we're appreciating that you're here remotely. Now, joining me to ask questions this evening are ABC7 political reporter Craig Wall and Univision Chicago anchor Erica Maldonado. So here are the ground rules for this debate tonight. The candidates will each have 45 seconds to answer each question. The first candidate to answer each particular question, will get another 30 seconds for a rebuttal. And then at the end of this debate, each candidate will get 1 minute for a closing statement. The order to respond first to the first question was determined by alphabetical order of their last names. So we will be starting with Darren Bailey. So, Mr. Bailey. Every single week, and sometimes even more than one a week, our nation, of course, has experienced another mass shooting. And whether it is Tulsa or Uvalde or Buffalo, and yes, here in Chicago, we hear people who are on the streets now, and they are simply making this cry out of their frustration and desperation to do something. So my question for you, sir, is what is the something? What is the one thing that if you are elected governor that you will do to help us solve this crisis?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here tonight. And it is a tragedy across our nation. My heart breaks for the families and the friends of everyone who have been afflicted by these travesties. But here in Illinois, we have some of the most strictest gun laws in the nation. So I think it's obvious when I read these stories about what's taking place, I see young people crying out for help, and sometimes they go ignored by family, by our education system, by our civic groups. We must offer the mental health solutions and help these people to be able to get help and to be able to function in life. And I think that's the only solution we have.
Thank you. Mr. Irvin.
You know, thank you very much for inviting us today and allowing us to come and talk to the residents of Illinois about taking back our state and what we're going to do to improve Illinois. Now, as a mayor of the second largest city, I personally have dealt with a mass shooting where a worker in our city showed up and decided he wanted to shoot five of his fellow employees. And then as our police ran in, he shot 5 of our police officers. He killed his fellow employees. Now, listen, it was important to bring healing back to our community, and that's exactly what I did. But what we have to do is look at common sense. We've got to focus on safety, and we've got to focus on responsibility. Making sure that we keep these guns out of the hands of criminals, and keep these guns out of the hands of people with mental illnesses. And that's why I'm getting support from police departments all throughout the state.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rabine.
Thank you for having us here. I appreciate it. I got to tell you, the one core value that I look upon that's so important is accountability. If we don't hold people accountable, we can't expect a lot of them. If we don't arrest people that are doing crimes, small or large, that's a problem. They're not held accountable. If we don't put people in jail that deserve to be put in jail, there's no accountability, we're going to have a lot of problems, and we do in the city of Chicago. We have 4 times more murders last year than the city of New York. I mean, New York is no haven for safety. We had 4 times more murders. And when we have people that don't hold these criminals accountable, it's going to continue to happen. We have a state's attorney like Kim Foxx. This will never get cleaned up. So these are things we have to do. We have to change the environment, change the culture. Accountability is the thing we got to think about first.
Thank you. Mr. Schimpf.
Well, thank you for the question, Alan. Thank you to ABC 7 for hosting this debate. Thank you to my fellow candidates for being here. And thank you to all of you who are tuning in and watching and learning about the governor's race. We do have to take action on this. Leaders need to lead. But it's important that we listen first and figure out what solutions actually can help the situation. Leaders need to listen, and we have to do something about mental health. It is a huge issue. We also have to make our schools safer. But most importantly, we have to have a governor who is going to hold himself accountable and say enough is enough. And one of the things that I will do as your governor is, unless I have significantly reduced violence in Illinois, you will not see me run for re-election.
Thank you. Mr. Solomon.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, ABC 7, Telemundo, WLS. Ladies and gentlemen watching from home, my heart goes out once again to Uvalde, Texas, for the massacre that happened there. It's unacceptable. It's tragic. As your governor, the first thing I would do is make sure that all our schools, K through 12, are secured by armed guards. If we can protect our banks, if we can protect our Hollywood stars, we need to be able to protect our vulnerable ones, including the kids. As governor, I would make sure that every school is secured, and then we'll talk about safety and public safety, increase the budget for public safety to make sure that we take this matter seriously.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for having me tonight. I am a father to a bunch of young children, and so it does break my heart to see this. I've met so many families of young children that have been shot and killed right here in the city of Chicago, and we need to take action. And when I'm governor, I am going to crack down on crime again. You know, the Democrats use every excuse, every crisis to step in and try to say gun control is the answer. Well, the real problem is the liberal agenda. The liberal agenda that has been taking God and faith values out of our society, the liberal agenda that has been devaluing families and removing fathers and 2-parent households as the core answer to the solution, that have just been in every way, you know, removing the most important factors that can get us back to a healthy society again. I am a true conservative, and I'm going to bring those values back into the government again when I am governor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bailey, now you have 30 seconds as a rebuttal or to use as you wish.
Absolutely. Just when Governor Pritzker signed the Safety Act, he made it illegal for schools to have armed resource officers. And I think we've got to address that and understand that. Just a few weeks ago, there was someone tried to get into a school in the state of Utah, and when they fired to break the glass in the door, the glass was protected and the bullets bounced off, so the perpetrator left. Last night, a police officer was shot here in Chicago by someone who had been released from prison in 2020. This has got to stop.
Thank you very much. We're going to be continuing, I know, on some of these questions that might be similar, at least following down this vein anyway. And Mr. Irvin, you'll be having the opportunity to answer this next question first, which comes from our Craig Wall. Craig?
Mayor, thank you so much. The school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, of course, has many, many people concerned about could it happen here? What is being done to make our schools safe? As governor, what specific steps would you take to ensure safety in the schools?
Well, in the city of Aurora, what we do is have our police officers that are school safety officers. We have them in our high schools, our junior highs, and they also go, you know, to our grade schools as well. You know, but we've got to look at this holistically. How do we stop crime generally in the state of Illinois? And we got to focus on making sure we support our men and women who wear that badge, who keep us safe every day. Matter of fact, I'm endorsed by the FOP, state FOP here in the state. I'm endorsed by Chicago FOP. I'm endorsed by the governor's own policing agency, the Illinois State Troopers, as well as sheriffs and counties all throughout the state, and my own local police department. That's because they know that I have the tools, and I've done it as a prosecutor and a mayor of the city of Aurora.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rabine, specific steps to increase safety in schools.
So we need to treat our schools like the gold at Fort Knox. we need to value every life that's so valuable in our children today and keep them out of harm's way 100%. Our airports are as safe as can be nowadays. Our schools need to be as safe. So, many solutions, in my opinion, and we need to look at all of them. Armed officers, of course. One way in, a secured way in, of course. When we look at metal detectors, a solution. When we look at advanced concealed carry training for teachers that want it, I think is a great idea. To have instead of gun-free zone, how about advanced concealed carry zone, where a person with a gun doesn't know. If somebody's trying to do bad things to our kids, they don't know if 10% or 80% of the teachers are armed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schimpf. Safety in schools.
Yes. The important thing to realize is while the governor leads and sets priorities, the people that actually keep our children safe are our local law enforcement and the school administrators. And what we need is a governor who is going to give them the authority and the support that they need. That's why I've been very critical of the Illinois State Board of Education that has undermined the authority of our local school districts. We need to have the schools be safer. I would encourage veterans to be placed. It's great exposure of our youth to our veterans, and they are trained. They have the training. They have the ability to do it. So having some more safety personnel in schools is something that we need, but it starts with a governor supporting local elected officials.
Thank you. And now Mr. Solomon, safety in schools.
Alan, it takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun. No parent should be able to worry about the safety of their kids at school. That is the responsibility of government. As governor, it'll be my important task to make sure that every school has armed guards. We can employ our vets. We have many volunteers. Many of our vets can volunteer to be the first responders before the police gets there. Of course, we're going to depend on the police. We're going to depend on every resources, but we need people present in school for the security and safety of our children.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sullivan.
We need a highly trained person in every single school with a weapon. Whether it's a teacher, an administrator, a school safety officer responsible for the safety of that school. Because Max is right, the only solution to a bad person with a gun is a good person with a gun. And I've been over in Afghanistan as an Army civilian helping set up local police forces. We need somebody who's going to be backing our law enforcement, be tough on crime, and will actually crack down on these things. And Richard Irvin, while he spouts all these endorsements, he was a strong supporter of Black Lives Matter. Just a year ago, he stood conflicted, he said, when he saw rioters burning cop cars in his own city. We need a leader who will actually lead, not just someone who will talk about it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bailey.
Well, a day one agenda for me will be to fire the state superintendent of education and ask for the resignation of all of the board members. The Illinois State Board of Education and the teachers union seems more interested in indoctrinating our children instead of educating. And they're not even talking about attempting to protect them. So I think I alluded to that earlier. Our schools can be soft armored. Each classroom can become a safe zone. We must, in our area, law enforcement take a very active role in protecting our schools and our children. And then we've got to make sure that these plans actually work and that they don't fail like what took place in Uvalde.
Mr. Irvin, 30 seconds, your rebuttal.
At the end of the day, what we need is a leader. J.B. Pritzker is not a leader here in the state, and he's shown that. He showed he's disregarded our police and law enforcement. Every day, we've got kids that are being killed. J.B. Pritzker says and does nothing. Every day we got police officers being shot at and many being killed throughout our state. J.B. Pritzker does nothing. He lets violent criminals out of prison early back in our communities. He lets cop killers out of prison early, back into our neighborhoods. That's got to stop. We need a governor who's going to stand up and lead and stand with law enforcement like I have and like I will continue to do as governor of this state.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rabine will be now answering our next question first, which comes from Erica Maldonado.
Good evening. Following on one of your comments in regards of crime in Chicago, this past Memorial Day weekend, at least 50 people got shot in Chicago. In 2021, we registered almost 800 murders in the city, but Chicago police statistics indicate that homicides and shootings are down this year Still, we are not at the same level as 2019 and 2020. Many of our families are worried every time they go out. Our kids are afraid also to play in the streets, go to the parks. Mr. Rabin, can you share, please, with our audience your plan to help curb the violence in Chicago? What would you do, and would you work with the mayor?
So we need to hire more police in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. We're down drastically for many reasons, including the vaccine mandate that many police left the force for that reason, not because they didn't want to take the vaccine. We're doing everything we can to ruin policing. We look at this HB 3653 bill that's in 2023 gets even worse as we make it, we don't arrest people anymore for trespassing. Okay, we're not going to have cash bail anymore in 2023 and on. This is purposeful that they're waiting until 2023 after this election. We have a governor that's been the worst governor against policing I've ever seen. We need to embrace our police. We need to work with our police to improve their jobs, and with that, we'll improve safety in our state of Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Schimpf. How would you curb violence in Chicago? Would you work with the mayor?
I'll start with the last part first. I've got the credibility to sit down with Mayor Lightfoot and State's Attorney Kim Foxx and talk about solutions. Before I got into politics, I spent my adult life as a prosecutor in the United States Marine Corps. I have prosecuted everything from drug dealers to child sexual abuse, rape, sexual assault. I even worked the trial of Saddam Hussein when I was in Iraq. So I've got the credibility to sit down and talk about what we can do, because the current status quo is unacceptable. Our plan that we have, our policy agenda, is called A New Start for Illinois. One of the 6 pillars of A New Start for Illinois is to increase the legal protections for law enforcement personnel. They should have hate crimes protection. It starts with supporting law enforcement.
Thank you very much. Mr. Solomon, violence in Chicago, what do you do about it?
Yes, thank you, Erica, for that question. 3 things, Alan. The first is relax the concealed carry laws to allow law-abiding citizens who wants to carry to protect themselves and their family to do so in the state of Illinois. Number 2, we need to increase the allocation, the budget allocation for public safety. Right now, historically in the state of Illinois, the allocation has never gone past 4 to 5%. And number 3, as governor, I would accept, unlike Mayor Lori Lightfoot, I would accept federal help if offered, regardless of who's president and regardless of the political party that he belongs to. Finally, back to the first thing, relax the gun laws. The first line of defense when you're facing an attack is yourself. Every individual, law-abiding citizens should be able to protect themselves.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sullivan, violence in Chicago, what do you do?
So I went around the state of Illinois and I talked with law enforcement officers and gave them a seat at the table, because they said they have not had a seat at the table under this current administration. And here's what they told me they wanted: fill every single police vacancy out there right now. Repeal this anti-police bill that J.B. Pritzker signed into law that coddles criminals. We also need to recall Kim Foxx, and I will lead those efforts, because we need a state's attorney that will actually prosecute crime. And I will surge the National Guard, because we need to treat this like the actual crisis that it is. And when it comes to Lori Lightfoot, she's the one who told J.B. Pritzker, no, don't bring in the National Guard. When there's a crisis on your doorstep and people are losing their lives, you push back as governor and be a real leader on this issue. And when I am governor, I'm going to be the most pro-law enforcement governor in the nation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bailey.
Chicago is a great city, and we've got to restore it. But interestingly enough, a week ago, you probably heard me refer to it as a hellhole. And you want to know what happened within hours after I made that statement? A homeless man was burned alive, and he's fighting for his life today. You've already heard what happened this past weekend. Mayor Lightfoot, Governor Pritzker, Kim Foxx, and their woke anti-police policies, they are responsible for this. And if we are going to restore Chicago, somebody's got to tell the truth. I said it, and when I'm elected as governor, I'll fix the problem, and we will restore the greatness to Chicago.
Mr. Irvin.
Listen, in Aurora, we've reduced crime substantially. Matter of fact, Aurora was one of the most violent cities per capita in the state of Illinois. And that was just not too many years ago. Now we're the 6th safest large city in America. That's because we supported our police. When we raised the budget of our police department, crime went down. And we focused on what I call the 3 C's. Children, because most of the crime being committed by young people. Get them in programs, in school, off the streets, and out of mischief. The second C, cops. When I say cops, I'm talking about community-oriented police officers. We've got to return to the beat cop. We have to have police in our communities working with our community members to address issues head-on and be proactive instead of reactive. Final C, community. We've got to have the community buy in and take stock in their community and take it back so no one returns. Those criminals don't return to that community. If you do that, you implement that, you can reduce crime just like we did in Aurora.
Mayor Irvin, do you want to tell anybody
Thank you very much. Excuse me, I got to jump in, Mr. Irvin. You still get 30 seconds for your rebuttal, if you wish, or to use it as you wish.
So I'd like to address Mr. Irvin there. I mean, there's nobody else here running that's freed up rapists as well as white beaters. Okay, and when we look at Aurora, I saw a 40% increase in your city, 40% increase in crime over your leadership. I don't call that leadership and really caring about our police and crime. I can't see how you're going to govern a state that way.
I need to allow you to answer for 15 seconds, Mayor.
They're absolutely wrong. You know, look at the statistics, and I didn't make this up. The Wallet Hub says Aurora is the sixth safest large city in America, and I stand on that.
All right, thank you. I'm going to move on now to our next question. There'll be other opportunities, of course, to talk amongst yourselves as well. But our next question is actually on taxes. And Mr. Schimpf, you get a chance to answer this question first. So here it is. Regardless, really, of how you measure this, Illinois residents are really shouldering some of the highest state and local tax burdens in the nation. I'm talking about property taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, gas taxes, you name it. So specifically, what will you do to reduce the weight of these taxes on residents of this state? Well, for one, so that more Illinoisans will actually stay here, and also so that perhaps people who don't live in Illinois will want to move here sometime.
Well, thank you for that question, and that is absolutely really the ultimate metric for whether Illinois is healthy or not, whether or not our population is growing, whether people want to come to Illinois to raise their families and grow their businesses, or whether they're fleeing our state. Our policy proposal is called A New Start for Illinois. It has 6 pillars to it. 2 of those 6 pillars address taxes. We have a predatory government in Illinois, and the way we do something about that is to end predatory practices. The most predatory practice is charging tax on tax. We are proposing a constitutional amendment that will put an end to that predatory practice. We also have to do something about property taxes. Property taxes are a threat to people's financial security.
Need to jump in right there, but thank you very much, Mr. Solomon. What would you do to reduce the tax burden?
CPR for Illinois, constitutional pension reform. Alan, we have to ask, what are we spending the tax money on? Why is Illinois so high in taxes? The answer, we're in debt. We're in debt up to our eyeballs. And what are we trying to pay off? The pension. Almost 30% of our budget, annual budget, and it's not even fully funded, Alan. That's what we're spending money on. We need to amend Article 13, Section 5 of our Constitution. That way we can save money and free up resources so people can come back to Illinois and make it a business-friendly state again.
Mr. Sullivan, what's your thoughts?
I'm a business guy and an entrepreneur, and we've created jobs all around the world. We are going to do that right here at home in Illinois. I am the only candidate in this race that has signed a taxpayer protection pledge saying, I refuse to raise taxes on the people of Illinois. No other candidate has done that, and you have to ask why. Do they plan on raising taxes on the people of Illinois? Because we do not have a revenue problem in the state. We have a spending problem. So I'm going to reduce the budget by $10 billion by doing pension reform, by actually consolidating more units of government than any state in the nation, more per capita government workers than any state in the nation. We need a hiring freeze, and we need a corruption and patronage audit that I will do from my office. And we are going to lower the taxes on the people of Illinois. Look more like Texas and Florida, not New York and California.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. How would you reduce the tax burden?
Well, as Mayor Irvin was increasing the gas tax by 2 cents in the city of Aurora, and his counterpart, Avery Bourne, doubled your gas tax, I was standing up in the state legislature and fighting against all this nonsense. We certainly have a problem, and it is destroying our families. It's destroying our business when people can drive across state lines and fuel up and save money and shop and eat out. And we've got to stop this nonsense. So a zero-based budget, starting at ground zero, rebuilding, getting the fat out of our budget. Friends, I've seen it for 4 years. The waste in our budget is immense, and it's going to lead to a restoration when we weed it out and rebuild the budget so that you understand it.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. What would you say to Illinois residents?
Let me tell you how we did it for Aurora and exactly how we can do it for the state. We can reduce taxes, property taxes every single year, just as I've done as mayor of Aurora. Every single year I've been there, we've reduced property taxes. Unlike my opponent, Darren Bailey, who's raised property taxes 81% and voted on it 13 times, higher than Chicago. Let me tell you how we did it. We did it by reducing duplication, getting rid of duplication of services. We did it by doing a decrement in every single department in the city of Aurora, and did more with less. We did it by economic development. We've done more economic development in the city of Aurora in the first 4 years of my time as mayor than other mayors have done collectively in the last 40 years. And when you reduce the services, and bloated services, when you reduce duplication of services, when you do economic development and bring in more jobs and business, that's how you reduce taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Rabine. The tax burden?
Yeah, I ask everybody to look this up, because Cranes, about less than a year ago, had the highest tax city for property tax in the country, Aurora, Illinois. So I would beg to differ. Unless they're wrong, you should look at that.
They're wrong.
Okay, I say this, forget about holding taxes or vetoing taxes. Okay, we need to crush property tax. I've been saying this from the very beginning. We need to crush property taxes to be the average of the country. The average of the country in a home pays 1% of the value in property tax. $200,000 home, $2,000. That's the average. Illinois is approaching $6,000 for that same house. That's highway robbery. We're going to stop it when I win. We're going to crush property taxes to the average of the country, 1% for commercial, 2% for
Thank you, Mr.
2%
Schiff.
for commercial. So.
Thank you. 8 years ago, we had a businessman running for governor who had no prior political experience, who said one thing and then once he got in office, did the opposite. You don't have to wonder about where I stand on the issues. You don't need a piece of paper to understand where I stand on the issues. I have a voting record. I have voted against raising taxes every single time it crossed my desk, and I've never introduced any legislation that would give the Illinois government new taxing powers. So if you want to know who has the record to back up their anti-tax rhetoric, it's me.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question comes from our Craig Wall. It has to do with the pandemic. Craig?
Mr. Sullivan, with experts saying that COVID is going to be with us, as governor, if there is a spike or any kind of variant that leads to hospitalizations, what would you do? Would you institute any kind of level of mask mandate? And would there remote learning be an option if local school districts want to do that for the safety of their children?
The best person to take care of any illness or any pandemic is you. I would trust the Illinois people to take take responsibility for themselves and their families. I would trust you to do the best for your own health. There will be no mask mandates, and there will be no vaccine mandates, and remote learning will be off the table. Look, the best person to make sure that they're healthy is you, and that's what I would do as governor. I would trust you, and I would make sure I empower you to do all you can for you and your family.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sullivan, mask mandates or remote learning, do you see them in the future under your administration?
No, day one, I would end the mandates, end the mask mandates, end the vaccine mandates, because they've been an absolute disaster for the people of Illinois. You know, J.B. Pritzker loves to tout science. Well, let's look at the science. Johns Hopkins showed those free states like Florida and Illinois, where we were locked down, no difference in COVID rates. The difference was on our economy and on our children and their learning outcomes suffering. So no, we need to take power away from this corrupt government and put it back in the hands of parents and individuals again. And that's the only way we're going to get back to being the land of the free in the state of Illinois again. And, you know, if you look at Mayor Richard Irvin, you know, he was someone who went right along with J.B. Pritzker and those lockdowns and mandates. He blames it on him. Well, leaders stand up and lead, and they lead from a place of liberty and freedom.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bailey.
Well, I'm the only person standing in this circle right now that actually did something, taking the bull by the horns, suing Governor Pritzker over these mandates and winning. So absolutely no mandates. Government educates, government informs, and government lets the free people choose what they want to do. I just want to take this time, Mr. Irvin, to address you something. I'm glad you're here tonight because I want to let you know something. I'm not interested in defeating you just because you're a Democrat. I'm interested in defeating you because you are a corrupt Democrat, and you're paid to play politics in the city of Aurora that have led to all this nonsense, taking from taxpayers and giving to people that support you. It's nonsense. You should not become governor.
Bring you back. I need to bring you back to the mask mandate question, which I think you did answer,
yeah,
sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Urban, it's your opportunity.
Yeah, and it's, and I won't be lectured by someone like Darren Bailey, who had a mask mandate on his own farm for the mask mandate on his own farm for the folks that he bussed in from other countries to work on his farm because he said Americans don't want to work. Listen, it's about leadership. It's about giving control back to our parents, giving a voice back to our parents and letting them decide about the health and safety of their family and of their children, and letting our local school districts make that decision. That's exactly what J.B. Pritzker didn't do. What he did was he made these executive orders and determined he knew best for everybody. What I would do is include our leaders throughout the state. He locked everyone out. What I would do was let the parents have a voice in their kids' education and what's going to happen with their kids wearing masks and getting vaccinated. That's what we have to do. Give parents their voice back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rabine.
So I have to argue with my friend Darren, actually. Thank you for that battle and winning that battle in the Clay County courts. You actually lost that at the Illinois Supreme Court.
No, sir. No, it never went to the Supreme Court. You are dead wrong on that.
So I fought.
Governor Pritzker never shut business down.
The vaccine mandate.
He never shut churches down.
I fought the vaccine mandate.
He never shut schools down because he couldn't. Well, you're not telling the truth, sir.
Can I get my time?
Let's allow each other to talk, please.
Can I get 30 seconds back on the clock?
Mr. Rabine.
Okay. I fought the vaccine mandate in October last year when I knew it was not constitutional for my teammates to be vaccinated against their will, health or religion. We won on January 14th against Biden's mandate, the biggest lawsuit in the country in a long time, U.S. Supreme Court. From then on, 80 million working Americans did not have to take the vaccine if they didn't choose to. That was a huge win, much bigger than one mask, one suit for one man.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, gentlemen. Mr. Schimpf, it's your turn. Your turn to speak, please.
Thank you. I will not be shutting the state down again. I will give local school boards the option to make the decision that they think is best. But it's local public health officials that have the best data to make local decisions. I do want to jump in on the legal issue. I supported you when you filed suit. I was glad that you really
did nothing, sir.
There was some radio interview. Darren, please let me finish. Okay, please. I haven't interrupted you. Okay, but the reality is, your own attorney, Tom DeVore, says in his campaign speeches, he says that after the case was transferred to Judge Grishow, you lost. Have that argument with Tom DeVore. Don't have it with me.
Argument, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Solomon.
Thank you, Alan. There's a faith factor and personal responsibility factor in every illness, in every, I believe, matters of health. As governor, I will trust you and I will allow you to bring your faith into the factor, into the equation. I will not shut down your places of worship like Governor J.B. Pritzker did, and I will trust you completely that you will do the best for yourself and your family.
Thank you very much. Our next question tonight is actually about education in the state, and it comes from Erica Maldonado. Erica.
Beginning in 2020, in Illinois schools, kids can learn about contributions of the LGBTQ plus community in our states. But in other states like Florida, public school teachers are actually banned from holding classroom instruction about sexual orientation or gender identity. Mr. Sullivan, you say that teaching identity, gender in kindergarten through third grade is wrong, and it's actually the place of the parents. If you get elected, would you ban LGBTQ plus instruction in Illinois public schools? And what do you say to kids and parents that actually welcome the inclusion in Illinois education?
So I went around the state and I talked with parents and teachers. And what they told me, we put in our agenda, which is the power to the parents' agenda. Number one, we are going to give school choice. Because right now, if you are wealthy, you have choice on where to send your kids to school. But if you are poor, you are condemning your kid to these underperforming public schools. But the next thing we need to do is defund the teachers' unions. They've become a radical wing of the Democratic Party, and we need to push back against those extremes. Then third, we do need to bring indoctrination out of the schools and excellence back in. And right now, sexual and racial identity politics is not the place for our young children in schools. I will be a fighter on this issue for my kids and for yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bailey, would you ban gender identity instruction in schools in Illinois?
Well, I served for 17 years on the North Clay School Board, and I don't believe that has any place in our schools. So I would leave that up to the Illinois State Board of Education and possibly the legislature to bring that to our desks. But we do have a problem. We've got to empower parents. They have got to know that they have full right of accountability and transparency in this process. So as governor, I will make sure that parents' voices are heard. I will make sure that school boards and schools are transparent and accountable to the parents. The parents. We must take our education back.
Mr. Irvin, your thoughts?
You know, parental control and parental rights are paramount in the state of Illinois. Listen, as we compete as a state, as a nation, with all the other countries that are far outpacing us, we've got to get back to the basics: reading, writing, arithmetic. We've got to make sure that our kids can compete on a global level and they can get the jobs that that'll make them successful in the future. Now, when we're talking about these side issues, we're not talking about the basic things that we need to do to make sure our kids are prepared for the future. It throws us off track. Reading, writing, arithmetic. Yeah, I mean, we can even throw STEM in there, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We got to focus on those things that actually give our kids an opportunity for the future.
Mr. Rabine.
Parents, not politicians, should be raising our kids with teachers, community by community. Graphic sexual education should not be taught kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade, as we're seeing today. It's got to stop. We've got to be a state that really cares about the growth of our kids. And parents, not politicians, need to be building the curriculum with our teachers. We've got a lot of work to do in Illinois. We've got to become a state where hopefully we can bring God and country back into our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Schimpf.
It's not difficult. School boards set curriculum. Parents hold school boards accountable. Everybody's talking about parents' rights now, and that's a good thing. That's an issue that is going to flip a lot of votes, and that's going to win the general election for us. I started talking about parents' rights last June, before the Virginia election. You can go on my website, schimpforillinois.com, and look at our New Start for Illinois policy agenda, but one of those items is a parents' rights constitutional amendment. Parents' rights means that parents determine their kids' education, health care, and maturity into adulthood, not the government.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Gender identity in schools.
No teacher in the state of Illinois should be teaching any child, any kid, K through 12, anything about sex, LGBTQ, or any other orientation, sex, or race. We could leave the inclusion to college. That's why you send your kids to college. K through 12, yes. My administration, including my running mate, Latasha Fields, we are going to ban CRT, CSE, comprehensive sexual education. And by the way, may I point out that recently we found out that the opt-out option is not actually working at all. Parents have no choice. In some of these schools, they don't allow the kids to opt out because there's nothing else for them to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, you have 30 seconds for your rebuttal or to add on.
Yeah, so I'm a parent to young children. It's one of the greatest privileges and joys of my entire life. And one of the most important things to me is that they get a good education. Right now, our education system is absolutely failing our kids in the state of Illinois. 2/3 of our kids are not reaching grade level standards in math, science, English, the basics. We need to get this indoctrination out and excellence back in. Look, I'm going to be showing up to PTA meetings as governor because I have skin in the game, and we are going to get excellence back in our education.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bailey will be answering our next question first. Illinois government, as you well know, is under the control of the Democratic Party right now. And I'm talking about from the state legislature to the statewide office holders, now, of course, including the governor. So how would you work with Democrats? Would you expect and would you demand and could you have bipartisan cooperation? Or do you think we're going to be in the kind of situation where we were stuck for a while like we were in the Rauner years?
No, we'll have cooperation. I've actually been doing that for 2 years as a state representative, and I've been doing that for the past 2 years as a state senator. You know, what matters most is the message that's given from the governor's office. So when we have a governor standing and expelling and talking about hope and what the state of Illinois should be and could be, I think we're going to have a lot of good cooperation. There are many Democrats that think like we do around this circle, but unfortunately they feel hindered that they won't get reelected if they subscribe to these policies of freedom and lower taxes and safe streets. When I have the pulpit and when I'm able to express that message, I think we'll have many come along. We will be able to work together because we must.
Thank you. Mr. Irvin.
You know, as mayor of Aurora, I was elected as a Republican in a Democratic stronghold. So I've been working across the aisle my whole political career. Matter of fact, not only have I been working with the Democrats on the city council in the city of Aurora, I've gone to Springfield and worked with the Democratic leadership to bring resources back to the city of Aurora. So working across the aisle is not a problem. I've been effectively getting that done. But I'm going to do something, you know, on the Irvin Bourne team that these other campaigns aren't going to do. I'm going to use our resources. I'm going to use our infrastructure. I'm going to use our ground game, not just to help myself and my running mate, Representative Avery Bourne, but to help every Republican up and down the ballot to make sure that we get rid of that supermajority that the Democrats have. And if you have a Republican governor and you have the Republicans House that's not in the superminority, we finally can push forward policy and put Illinois back on track.
Thank you, Mr. Rabine.
So I've been negotiating thousands of contracts over the last 40 years. I don't look at who I'm negotiating as Democrats, Republicans, because in business you just don't do that. We've been very successful, and always with a goal in mind. And we call these goals, when they're amazing goals, they're moonshot visions that we have to create something nobody has ever created before. These moonshot visions take us from normal to world-class companies. Illinois deserves to be a world-class state. We can't be a mediocre state giving mediocre service to our customers, the taxpayers, anymore. We need to reduce regulation on small business across our state like never before to be competitive with the rest of the country. We need to reduce our property taxes again to be competitive with the rest of the country. We do this, we're going to be a great place to be, and Democrats and Republicans alike will love it.
Mr. Schimpf, bipartisan in your administration?
Definitely. First of all, Mayor Irvin, I'm glad you've got those resources. I just wish you were using them to unify our party rather than divide our party right now. But we can work with Democrats because there is a lot that unites us. And our New Start for Illinois policy agenda, it's not built on Republican values, it's built on American values. So I believe that Democrats will work with me to pass that agenda. I also will do a lot administratively. I will end administrative overreach that is choking the life out of our state. I have experience on JCAR, the Joint Committee for Administrative Rules. Nobody else talking to you tonight has that experience. I understand how the administrative state works in Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Do you work with Democrats?
I'm not going to stand here and tell you that, oh yeah, it's going to be great working with the Democrats. Here's the reason. They don't have any incentive to work with any Republican governor. And none of us here can assure you that the Democrats, the supermajority of Democrats in the House and Senate, will work with the Republican governor. So here's what I'm going to do. The question, by the way, is not whether I'm going to work with them. The question is whether they're going to work with me as governor. I'm going to give them an incentive and motivation to do so. There are 118 state rep seats in the state of Illinois and 59 state senators. We are going to make sure that every single seat is competed and contested by a Republican candidate. There will be no more unopposed Democrat running in any ballot.
Mr. Sullivan.
We need an outsider to fix Illinois that does not owe anybody anything. And you know, Richard said his greatest and his only strength, he has a whole lot of money that he's willing to throw around. Well, money cannot buy you character. Money cannot buy you a conservative record. And when it comes to governor, I'm going to run as governor to do three things. Number one, I will do executive orders on day one in the mask mandates, in the vaccine mandates, change out the boards. The Illinois State Board of Education, the Prisoner Review Board, gone, replaced. When it comes to running agencies well, you don't need the legislature to run our agencies well. And that's what I'm going to do when I'm governor, hold them to account. And lastly, we have veto power, God willing. And lastly, we need to recruit in next generation leaders who don't go by this corrupt pay-to-play that exists on both sides of the aisle. I'm going to put an end to that corruption and run Illinois well.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, you have your rebuttal now.
So we certainly have a failure of Republican leadership here in the state of Illinois, and I believe that's what's got us in the super minority. So we look back and we see the failures of the last administration. I've said from the beginning of this race that the worst thing, rather than having J.B. Pritzker serve 4 more years, would be to have the wrong Republican in office. And now we have that possibility before us. So we have got to stand up. We've got the answers with our platform, and we need a Republican governor who's actually going to tell the truth and do something.
Thank you very much. Our next question is going to be about the issue of abortion rights in Illinois. And Mr. Irvin, you'll have the opportunity to answer this question first, and it comes from our Craig Wall.
Mr. Irvin, with the Supreme Court poised to overturn Roe v. Wade possibly as soon as this month, sending the issue back to the states, what changes would you pursue as governor here in Illinois, and under what cases would you support a woman's right to get an abortion?
You know, I'm pro-life, but as a lawyer and as a former prosecutor, I think it's irresponsible to comment and hypothesize on a leaked draft of the Supreme Court decision that hasn't even come down yet. Once we get the final draft, then let's talk about it. But let me tell you what I do, and as I talk right around the state talking to folks what they're upset about. They're upset about what happened just yesterday. Yesterday, parental notification just expired in the state of Illinois. That means a teenager, J.B. Pritzker signed legislation that allows a teenager to walk into an abortion clinic, 12, 13, 14, 15, to get an abortion without their parent being notified. We would reinstate that immediately. It's abhorrent to think that it's okay that a teenager, a child, can walk into an abortion clinic and get an abortion without their parent knowing about it. So that's something we immediately got to reinstate.
Mr. Rabon.
Yeah. So I'm unapologetically pro-life. I'm really a champion of adoption. My wife and I, my late wife Cheryl, went through a lot to figure out how we could adopt our 4th child. And he's one of the blessings of our lives. Nikita was Smirnoff, is now Nikita Rabine. Amazing young man. That's such a blessing in my life. So I want to make adoption so much easier than it is today in Illinois, number one. But I also want to bring back parental notification. It's crazy. It's crazy that a young girl, pregnant, confused, in days, might be able to go to an abortion center and get an abortion without her parents understanding what's going on. That's sad. To think about after-birth abortions as well. It's got to stop. And we've got so many things to do here. But taxpayer-funded abortions. How crazy that we had 40,000.
Thank you.
Taxpayer abortions last year.
Mr. Schimpf, what would you do on the issue of abortion?
I am pro-life. I have a voting record to back that statement up. You don't have to guess about it. Right now in Illinois, a preborn child can be aborted up until live birth for any reason, no matter how heinous, like gender selection, and it's paid for by the taxpayers. That is radical, that is extreme, and when I am governor, I will sign any legislation that moves us closer to the mainstream on this issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Solomon.
I am unapologetically and uncompromisingly pro-life. I actually believe that every life has a purpose, regardless of how they're conceived. Therefore, it's my prayer that Roe v. Wade be overturned. And as governor of the state of Illinois, when Roe v. Wade is overturned, I will make sure 2 things. Not a single dollar, not a single cent of taxpayers' money would go towards abortion or the funding of any organization that supports abortion. And number 2, it'll be my priority to make sure that Illinois is an abortion-free state. Illinois will follow Roe v. Wade, and that's what I and LaTasha Fields will be doing as governor and lieutenant governor.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
When I'm governor, I will be the most pro-life governor in the history of the state of Illinois. Conservatives have been fighting for decades for this moment of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and now the battle moves to the states. We in Illinois have gotten used to being taxed to death. Well, now we are being taxed to murder unborn children. And that is wrong, and I will fight back against it. And I think conservatives around the state need to take this opportunity to hear from Richard Irvin of, do you support the overturning of Roe v. Wade? Do you support taxpayer-funded abortions? This is a clear conservative value that people deserve to hear from you on.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, though, first, your response.
I am proudly pro-life, and I stand here amongst you as the only candidate that has been endorsed by every pro-life and pro-family organization in the state of Illinois. Day one agenda, we must end taxpayer-funded abortion. There's no reason that our tax dollars should be funding over 50,000 abortions each year. Something that I learned from immersing myself in the churches here in the South Side and in the West Side of Chicago is the idea of making abortion unnecessary, giving true options and support to pregnant women, and then that's through civic groups, churches, and religious organizations, and making sure that we make it easier, much easier, to adopt here in Illinois.
Mr. Irvin, it's your chance for a rebuttal, and you've heard some people here bringing up your name on this issue.
You know, I know many of my opponents here on the stage are attacking me, and I understand. I get it. You know, they're threatened by the fact that I'm violating their political aspirations, and I'm hurting their political aspirations. Let me tell you why I'm Republican. My grandfather taught me when I was a young man. You know, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach him to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Democrats want to give a fish. They want to give handouts. You know, we don't need handouts. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, so I don't have to give. So I don't have to get handouts. You know, look. You know, the reason J.B. Pritzker is supporting the reason. Hold on. The reason J.B. Pritzker is supporting
Thank you very much.
Darren Bailey is because he knows Darren Bailey can't
your
win.
rebuttal time. Thank you so much. All right, we actually have a short amount of time left, and you're going to get a quick question here. So you'll each get just 20 seconds, please, to answer this particular question. And the question is, if you are elected, what is the very first thing, the first issue you'll tackle when you get elected to office? Mr. Rabine.
An executive order, stop this crazy bill, 3653. They call it the Safety Act, which is the opposite of that. It's Pritzker's attack on law enforcement. First thing we do.
All right. Mr. Schiff.
I made a promise over a year ago that the very first act I would take upon being governor was to call up whoever was the state superintendent of schools and tell them to start the process of rescinding the culturally responsive teaching standards. That's the first act, but my first focus will be standing with our law enforcement so we can make our states safe again.
Mr. Solomon.
First thing, banning all mandates, vaccine, masks, ensuring that all schools are protected, armed guards, and making sure that we give back all Pritzker taxes. There was this governor that came into office, and his first day of work was to increase the taxes for Illinois.
Mr. Sullivan.
When I'm governor, I'm going to crack down on crime again here in the state. We've coddled criminals for far too long. I am going to support law enforcement unequivocally. We are going to repeal this anti-police bill. We are going to surge the National Guard to be able to treat this like the crisis that it is. We need safety on the streets of Illinois, and I'm going to bring it.
Mr. Bailey, first issue you'll tackle.
Dr. Ayala, State Superintendent of Education, pack your bags because you're fired. That's the first thing. We must protect our greatest asset, which is our children. And then we move to law enforcement and let them know that they have a governor who has their backs so that we bring law and order to the streets of Illinois.
Mr. Irvin, your first priority.
Reinstate parental notification, bring pride back to the state as far as law enforcement and support our law enforcement officers, and repeal the Safety Act. We got to make sure we support our men and women that keep us safe every single day. So the first thing one of the first things we'll do after repealing the parental notification is making sure our officers know that their governor has their back. I'll have their back.
Thank you very much. Now it is time for the closing statements from the candidates. Each candidate gets 1 minute. Mr. Sullivan, you'll be able to start things off, please.
The reason why I'm running for governor is because I love our home. And I hate our politicians and these corrupt insiders that have been ruining it. I'm going to be a fighter, an outsider, conservative fighter against the far extremes of the left and also against the establishment Republicans that are also corrupt insiders, like Richard Irvin, who, as we saw here tonight, would not even answer questions about Roe versus Wade and stopping taxpayer-funded abortions. We need a true conservative who can lead. I am that leader. Over in Afghanistan, as an Army civilian, I've helped set up local police forces. We are going to make our streets safe. I'm a parent to young children. We are going to get indoctrination out of the schools and excellence back in. I've helped create jobs all around the world. We are going to lower taxes and regulations, create the jobs of the future here in Illinois. And I have an iron will rooted in my Christian faith values that we are going to turn this state around. And so I ask all of you to please join me in saving this home that we love. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our closing statements go in reverse order. Mr. Solomon, you're next.
I identify as a Christian, conservative, Republican. Christian because God first in everything. We've pushed God away from everything. We've pushed God away from our society. And that's the first thing we're supposed to run to. I welcome your faith in politics, and your faith should not be a bar to your politics. I'm a conservative because our social and cultural values are under attack. Evil used to hide, ladies and gentlemen. Not anymore. Evil is here, and they're attacking our children. I will protect our kids. their security and safety in their schools, and what they learn, what they're indoctrinated. Make sure there's no indoctrination, only education. I will make sure that there's immediate relief to all taxpayers of the state of Illinois. We will cut back on all the fees and taxes of J.B. Pritzker, and we will begin to work on the long-term goal of CPR for Illinois, constitutional pension reform. That way, the Democrats will not have any reason to increase taxes anymore. Vote for me.
Thank you, Mr. Shipp. 1 minute is yours.
Yes. No, I'd like to close by thanking all of you that were watching tonight. Thank you again to ABC for putting this together. Thank you to my fellow candidates for a spirited debate. We have some disagreements on stuff, but we are all trying to do what is best for Illinois, and that means J.B. Pritzker has to go. Folks, stuff never seems to change in Illinois. The candidates come and go, but things stay the same. And that's because it's the same mega donors, the same political operatives, it's the same special interest groups. I'm not beholden to any of those. I'm somebody that, even if you hadn't heard of me before tonight, you've been trusting me for over 30 years as a Marine Corps prosecutor, a Marine Corps infantry officer, and even representing the United States as the attorney advisor in the trial of Saddam Hussein. I'm asking you to trust me one more time. Trust me as your governor who can work hard, tell the truth, and lead in a way that unites us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rabine.
So if we want a farmer to lead our state, Darren's the only guy. If it's a beauty contest and a good-looking man, boy, you know what? We have no chance. Jesse wins by a landslide. If we want a Democrat to lead the Republican Party, Richard, you're the guy. 7 of 8 of the last elections, you voted in a Democratic primary. I've never voted in a Democrat primary, and 3 of the 4 top candidates have. I got to tell you, it's time to elect a leader who's built and turned around businesses and understands what it's like to turn things around, because boy, we need it in Illinois. It's time to elect a governor also that can lead Illinois, my moonshot, to be the state by 2025, where more people are moving into our state than any other state in America. When we do this, it'll be the biggest turnaround in the history of our country. I'm Gary Rabine. I'm looking for your vote on June 28th. It's Rabine time.
Thank you. Mr. Irvin.
You know, I'm a real veteran of the United States Army that served our country in war. And I'm a former prosecutor who personally put criminals behind bars. I'm the mayor of the 2nd largest city in the state of Illinois with a proven record of reducing taxes, proven record of reducing crime, proven record of attracting business and attracting people and getting things done. That's what we need in the governor of the state of Illinois. You know I threaten these gentlemen's aspirations, and I know they're going to attack me, and that's okay. But the reality is, you got to wonder, why is J.B. Pritzker spending tens of millions of dollars to attack me and to help my opponent, Darren Bailey? Because he knows Darren Bailey can't win a general election against him, and he knows that I'll beat him. That's why he's spending in the Republican primary, he's spending tens of millions of dollars to take me down, because he knows that if I get the general, I'm going to beat him, and I'm going to be the Republican governor for the state of Illinois, to put Illinois back on track, to bring pride back to the state of Illinois, to bring excitement back to the state of Illinois, to make us the true land of Lincoln again. You know, we're going to be the best state in the union, and it'll be under the urban
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey. We end with you.
Well, I'm a farmer, and I'm glad I wore my boots tonight, because it's really starting to get deep in here. And we're starting to have fun. We're just getting warmed up. So thank you so much for this opportunity. But I'm running to restore hope to all the good people in the state of Illinois. And we're going to do that by returning safety to our streets. We're going to restore our education, and we're going to actually support working men and women so they can raise their families and thrive in Illinois again. I'm a farmer, and I love to remind people what farmers do, since Illinois is an agricultural state. Farmers solve problems, farmers fix things that are broken, and farmers grow things. And as a matter of fact, about 250 years ago, it was a group of farmers and common people that created the most amazing nation on the face of this earth, a nation of free people. So when I'm elected as your governor, I will build upon that. God bless, good night, and thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I got to say that actually concludes our debate this evening. I want to thank each and every one of you, here or remotely, for being part of this evening, for joining us. I want to remind you as well, the primary election